And I always strive to do my best. I will give everything my all. And sometimes for some people, it's just not good enough. But I know that I've done what I can do. And that's really it. As long as you're being honest with yourself and you are trying hard, there probably are occasions where you think, reflecting on it, actually, do you know what? I could have done better. That's different, but and all the planning in the world and all the wonderful documentation in the world, there will still be issues on the job site.
Welcome to the Design Dialogues, the podcast where we dive deep into the business of interior design. I'm Beth Beesky, the founder of More Time to Design and a designer with over 13 years of experience. I'm here to help you navigate the challenges of running a successful studio, whether you're a solo designer or leading a team. Each week, I chat with industry experts and share practical insights to help you streamline your processes, grow your business, and create a studio that thrives. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy our Design Dialogues. Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Design Dialogues podcast. And this week I am joined by Hannah Brown from Hey Design. Hi Hannah.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm really looking forward to our chat today. So as always, I like to start with finding out, what can you see out your window today?
Well, I love where I live on the Central Coast. We live on a couple of acres. And I've got two windows I can see out of. So one is more my back garden and it's beautiful trees. And the other one, I can see our chicken coop and some fruit trees.
Oh, how idyllic. Oh gosh, that sounds just perfect, really. And how long have you been there?
We've lived here now on the Central Coast for 6 years, and I've lived in Australia for 13 years this year.
Yeah, awesome. Oh, very cool. So tell me a little bit about Hey Design and your journey into interior design.
Well, I'd always had an interest in interiors and architecture from a very young age. But actually, I took quite a different career path before moving to Australia. In the UK, I used to work in child protection.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
I love these stories. I had Marcus from Little Road on a couple of weeks ago, and he was a paramedic. And I was like, oh, my goodness. I love these complete and utter 180-degree career changes.
Yeah. So very, very different. My mum and dad were foster carers since a very young age. And so I just grew up like that was my life.
Yeah.
And I think that's obviously what led me down that career path at the time. But I've always had an interest in design. My mum and dad renovated lots of houses, and we were always part of the decision-making, the designing process of how the house was going to look. So I loved problem-solving layouts from a very young age.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. And so when I moved to Australia and we had children, and I didn't really work in a career as such. I just did jobs as you do, your young children at home. And then when we moved to here, and we bought this house with the intention of adding an extension for my mum and dad to move over to Australia to live in. Yeah. And so the sort of creative juices started flowing again. And I came across SketchUp as a software and loved it. Was following YouTube videos for a while, but obviously the web version is pretty limited in what you can do. Yeah. And then I found Claire Leroy, the Little Design Corner SketchUp course, and I was showing it to my husband and showing him all these possibilities, convinced him this was a great investment just for our house alone, really, and what we could do. And so I took up Claire's course during lockdown in 2020, and I loved it. And so I was learning that at home. At that point, I had 2 kids in school and a 1.5-year-old.
Oh my goodness!
Lockdown, and so I would just do bits and pieces where I could, which was a great, great way the course runs. And I just found that I loved it, and I found that I won't say it was easy, but I found that I got a grasp of it really quickly. And Claire has a wonderful support group where people post questions and problems, and I just found that a lot of once I've got grasp of the whole on interiors, because there's so much more to SketchUp than just interiors. You can build anything. And I just found a lot of people would ask me for help would send me a message or just say, hey, Hannah, how did you do this? And I'd been and ahhing about what my next career step would be, progression. And so I started looking back towards, well, not architecture, because I was concerned about how long that would take me, the demand on me and my family to do architecture. I looked at drafting and I looked at kitchen and bathroom design. Mm-hmm. And it really came down to practicalities of it. Drafting was only available like south of Sydney and you had to physically go. And kitchen and bathroom design was in Newcastle, but it was a live class online and you only had to go every so often when they were doing visits to showrooms and things. So that's what led me down, start doing a kitchen and bathroom design course through TAFE. Oh, wow. I really loved that. And alongside that and knowing SketchUp, I basically just started my business, got an ABN, got a name, got some terms and conditions and a contract, which obviously is the biggest investment, I think, at the beginning.
Yeah.
Got hold of a website name and held on to it for a while because I couldn't afford to build a website straight away. But, got all the things in place ready for when I was to go and just started really, really small. Yeah. One or two interior designers just reach out to me and I help them. And I charged pittance for what to charge. So, and you actually touched based on it in another podcast, talking about getting into design when it's not your first career and you're not fresh out of university at 21. It's actually really hard to get into. I couldn't go to Sydney and join a big design firm and be a junior and do really long hours. It's just not practical for my family. And so those are all the factors that made me go, what can I do that I enjoy, that will earn me some money, but works around my family's needs. My oldest boy has autism and I need to be flexible. I need I need the school to be able to call me and talk through things and be able to go to planning meetings and things like that. And if he's having a hard day, just helping through that process without getting too stressed about having to be at work on time.
Yeah.
So those are all those factors sort of is what led me to create Hey Design. And just while I was building my knowledge and understanding and getting the qualifications, I started by offering documentation to other people and mostly other interior designers, lots of cabinet makers and really small builders who are just getting their building license and doing really small bathroom renovations, people like that. And it just kind of steamrolled from there.
And so, because you, for anyone who doesn't know your business, you really offer documentation support for interior designers, small builders, cabinet makers, etc.
Yes.
Did you always know that was the path you were going to go down, or was it kind of like a niche that appeared and then you were kind of like, okay, this might be a model that I quite like in terms of business and taking into consideration all of those things that, the flexibility and all of that kind of stuff? Like, how did you work out that was the niche you were going to concentrate on?
I think through a number of sort of Facebook groups, I found there was a need and a lot of people asking for this sort of help. And I thought, well, I can do this and I enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
I don't have lots of my own clients yet to be doing lots of my own work. And I'm still learning and not comfortable or confident making these huge decisions. Somebody else is making those decisions and I'm drawing them up for them. Yeah. So I get to do the drawings, but I also learn from doing the drawings as well, why decisions are made, why things happen a certain way, those sorts of things.
One of the things that I have found really interesting, though, when we've been chatting, like we chat on like DMs and stuff like that, is how much, though, you find yourself, like, I think you're doing yourself a disservice saying like you're still learning and stuff like that, because you quite often are making sure that the designers that you're working for and who you're doing the documentation for, that it actually works in terms of measurements and, regulations and stuff like that. So you most probably know so much more than you actually realize, kind of thing. But are you surprised by how often designers are like, it actually doesn't technically work?
Yes and no. And I think it might be to do with how they've come about being an interior designer, maybe the course that they've done.
Yep.
And a lot around sort of colour theory and, other elements of interior design, but not the nitty gritty technical side of building a kitchen. I
Yeah.
found that's lacking, and that's where I really found that niche through that course that I was doing. But it was both. It was design and it was practical elements as well, and it's kind of married the two together.
Mm.
And so there are lots of designers that come to me with a drawing of a kitchen or a bathroom and give it to me. And if I know it's not going to work, I won't just draw it up.
Yep.
And I'm not a fan of people not wanting to acknowledge filler pieces and end panels and things like that. Like, it needs to be in the drawing because the client needs to know what they're actually getting.
Yeah.
And if you draw something that goes right up to a wall and they get something that's got a huge filler piece at the end, and they're like, well, that wasn't what you showed me.
Yeah.
And they get confused and they're like, but I was relying on this cupboard being this exact size so I could fit this specific, piece of equipment inside it or something like that. And it's those small things that easily get missed. You see kitchens where fridges are put right at the end against a solid wall, and people have built this dream kitchen and got this lovely expensive fridge, and then they can't even open the door. Oh, and it's so painful to watch.
I know. I'm like, that just, I think one of the things, and like, it is really interesting. And I do think this comes down to a lot of like where you come into the industry. So like, if you start as a junior, fresh out of uni kind of thing, you spend a lot of time doing that. So quite often, especially in big firms, you'll sit there and you're the person who's drawing stuff up kind of thing. And if you're really fortunate, you have someone who mentors you and explains to you why you need a filler piece next to a fridge, next to a wall, like, the very obvious thing. But I do think it's interesting, the observation around where you come into the industry. It is very, very difficult to start as a junior if you come into it as a second, third or fourth career because, as you said, we've got families and commitments, and not saying that young people don't have that, but it is different. The pressures on you, or not the pressures, but the demands on you are different, and the considerations that you have when you're looking for that first job are different. But I do think that then leads to a lack of understanding around what actually a documentation pack is. Like, it is a communication tool that we use, and it's not just about showing how pretty the kitchen is going to be. It really is showing how it functions. Like, the pretty part of it is the last part we should be thinking about. But I often think that gets missed with designers.
Yes, I agree. Like you say, if you've had the opportunity to work your way into a company as a junior and work your way up and learn sort of all those different elements of a business that you're not necessarily responsible for, but you get to learn them or shadow somebody, and all the different aspects that you don't get when you come in on your own. And one of those is definitely sort of documentation and how a kitchen gets put together.
And quite often as well, like I know a lot of designers who do come in as they might start their own firm straight out of uni or something, but it's often they will be mentored by a very good builder or a very good joiner, and they have the right kind of relationship and the right attitude to actually absorb all of that knowledge, because there is so much technical detail that is needed to get, if we just talk about bathrooms and kitchens, like they are some of the most hardworking rooms in our house, and they're also the most expensive rooms in a new build or renovation. And so you really need to get those details right to make sure you're delivering a great product for the client.
Yeah, and I would say building those relationships with a local cabinet maker or a builder is so important, especially if you're on your own. If you start on your own and you don't know anyone, those relationships, they're just great because there's a bit of back and forth, and some of the cabinet makers I work with, we'll chat about something and they'll even say to me, "Oh, is that going to work?" And I'll draw it and be like, "No, it's actually not." And it goes both ways, where I can draw something and say, "Hey, is this actually going to work?" And it goes both ways, that conversation, and we help each other.
Yeah, and you definitely have to have the attitude of there's no stupid questions. Like, there really isn't. Like, park your pride, because the question that you think might be stupid and you don't want to ask could be, a very expensive mistake down the line. And believe me, that's a much more awkward conversation to have than asking the question that you might feel a bit silly about.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
you work with lots of designers and you help them kind of bring their documentation to life. Can you tell me a little bit about your process? Because I think this is one of the things that a lot of designers would think to outsource as one of the first things they'll outsource. But quite often it'll be like, well, I don't know how to do it. Like, how much information do I need to pass on? Like, how much can I just, like, is it like a rough sketch and Hannah can just read my mind? Like, how can you tell me maybe about a good handover or a good briefing from a designer and a bad briefing from a designer, just so we can get an understanding around if we are thinking of outsourcing our documentation, what should we be doing?
I would say, obviously, the more information, the better. When it comes to something like a kitchen and even a bathroom as well, specifications for all the fixtures is really important. So, and even just a web link with, the oven and the fridge and the tap and elements like that. And I will always go to the web link, find the specifications and model, or either find a model that's exactly the same size or work something that is. And that just helps. 90% of the time they're hand drawn, what I receive. And some people will say, and some people are really confident in knowing what they want. And so that comes down to the experience of the designer. So some people give me exactly what they want and they know it's okay, and I will draw it up. And some people will say, can you check this is okay? Yeah. Either way, if I drew something it wasn't going to work, I'd let either party know. But some people come with the experience that they can draw it perfectly as a hand drawing, but they want the digital version. And they just either don't have the time or they haven't learned the software to do it yet. And those are the two biggest factors to why people outsource. Yeah. So generally, I would need all the measurements of the space. If there's any architectural plans to go with it, that's a bonus. Where windows are, all the finishes, what the door fronts are going to be, handles, or like everything you can think of. I need to know, because that will make it more accurate. Yeah. The less you give me, the more assumptions are made, that I'm just going to use a standard size oven, things like that. And then there'll always be some back and forth chat about elements. And what I generally do is I like to work on a fixed fee base. And some people struggle to understand why I do that. But the reason is that I've found it's better value both ways. If I gave somebody an hourly rate, but I work twice as fast as the next person, my hourly rate would either have to be extortionate or I would really lose out. Yep. And so I just find a fixed fee. If it takes me 5 hours or it takes me 10 hours, it doesn't matter. You're paying the same. And
I actually think from the designer's perspective, that is actually so much better, because then when they're putting together their fee proposal, it's just a line item that they can put into their kind of calculations. There's not an unknown. It's, so it's very easy for them to go, okay, it's going to cost me X amount to have the documentation done. They might be putting like a markup on it to cover their coordination time, but it's a fixed known, which is the best thing when you're building out a budget. So I actually think that is an awesome business model from your perspective.
Yeah. And I found as well, so I'd offer one round of revisions. Yeah. So once they've taken it to the client and they've had a discussion about some small changes, they come back and I'll update, and that's included, which I find is enough. Really, there shouldn't be too many back and forths. And if there's that many back and forths, you probably need to be charging your client as well for all those back and forths if they keep changing their mind.
Yeah. And then where in the process should you be brought in?
I like to know as early as possible if a project's coming up. Yeah. Most rooms I can give a ballpark figure for, so you can kind of estimate, including that in your costings. And I don't like to block out my diary too far ahead. I know some that say, I'm taking projects for June. I couldn't do that. Yeah. I will generally say, give me about 2 or 3 weeks notice. Just say, hey, Hannah, I've got this project coming up.
Yeah.
It's for a kitchen. Here's the floor plan. So I know roughly the size of the space. You don't even have to tell me what you're doing with it yet. Just, I've got a good idea. And then I will say, great, it would be approximately this amount. And they'll say, I'm meeting with the client on this day. I will have the drawings back to you, the rough sketches by this date. And then I'm going back to see the client by this date. And then I will fix my time in between that. And then one of the other parts that's really important is once they've been to see the client for review, that they then have a fixed date that they want it back for again. Some of the downfall I've seen is they might leave the drawings with a client and just wait for feedback. And it drags out my process too, because I can't promise you I'll have the time to do the work then, because I've set aside time for you. Yeah. And then I know I have a project starting next Monday, and I know I have a project starting the following Monday, and then you have pushed this out and, you're waiting for a client to come back to you. But I'm like, well, I'm really sorry. I'm actually busy on my next project because I have a schedule.
Yeah. And that's like so important. Like, I've been talking recently about a time, like you need to give your clients a timeline for your project. And this is just another reason why you need to give them clear timelines and guidance around like the cadence of a project kind of thing. And especially if you're using like external consultants like yourself, everyone has their own timelines. And so, if the flow-on effects of, say, like them getting back to you, you might take an extra month because, you have your schedule to fit in with. So I think that just kind of, once again, you need to be giving your clients timelines for the project and sticking to them. It's not just like a nice to have. It's this is what we are working to. And I think so often, I always find this really interesting. I think so often because we are working with people on their homes, it's the last thing they get to at night, or it's not like, even though it is a priority for them, they get busy with work and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's one of the things that's quite different from doing like a commercial project or something. When you are working on residential, it gets slotted into, we'll look at that on the weekend, or we'll look on that. And I think when you're building out your timeline, you need to think of that and go, okay, well, I'm going to say that I need that by Monday so that they can have the weekend to do it, and it's not, they're not always going to be missing the deadline kind of thing. So I think that's really interesting.
And along with that is, once they say yes, that's perfect, that's exactly what we want, they'll be expecting to go like then. So when are we starting? Well, it's like
hold on.
You spent 4 weeks thinking about it, and now you're saying yes. Well, I've still got to, actually do the work.
Yeah. So true. So true. So you've been in business for a while now. What's one of the things that you've learned along the way from running your business?
That we all make mistakes. As wonderful as documentation can be, and I always strive to do my best. I will give everything my all. And sometimes for some people, it's just not good enough.
Yeah.
But I know that I've done what I can do. And that's really it. As long as you're being honest with yourself and you are trying hard, there probably are occasions where you think, reflecting on it, actually, do you know what? I could have done better. Yeah. That's different. But, and all the planning in the world and all the wonderful documentation in the world, there will still be issues on the job site.
So how do you deal with that? Because I can imagine many designers coming back and going, so like a good process would be, if you were outsourcing your drawings, the designers should still check them when they come back from you. They should still be casting their eye over it, and they should still just be making sure it all kind of fits. I would guess a lot of designers would not do that. They would just be kind of like, great, they're done. Hannah's done them. We'll send them off kind of thing.
100%, I would like to think that they all do.
But, life's busy. And I think this is where strong processes really help, because it kind of it's just something you have to do and you get into the habit of. But how do you deal with it when maybe it comes back to you and it's like, this was drawn wrong, or someone like you've made a mistake? Like, how have you dealt with that in the past?
I've not really had many, to be honest with you. I don't know if that's the quality of my work or the fact that I work with people that are pretty easygoing. I'm not sure, but I think nearly all of the designers I work with look over something before they give it to the clients. I did have one the other week where I'd updated one small element in SketchUp, and if you know how SketchUp works, it has a sister software called Layout, and that's where all the documentation happens.
Yep.
I changed one small thing in SketchUp and it changed all the measurements in Layout, but I didn't notice because I was only doing one small change, and I sent it, and the person just emailed me back and said all the measurements are wrong on the first page, and I was really apologetic, and I was like, it teaches me that when I do one tiny update, I need to check the whole document for changes. This Layout is, as wonderful as SketchUp is, there are some little features that are kind of annoying. And they were really good, and I just apologized, and I very quickly fixed up and got it back to them as soon as I could.
Yeah. And look, I think that's really that's a great example. It's all about clear communication, and it's not, dealing with it in the moment. And for anyone who's used Layout, they'll understand how glitchy it is. It's I don't understand how they can't fix it. But anyway, but I think that is, like, no one is perfect. As you said, absolutely no one is perfect, and mistakes happen. Even with the best processes and the best plans, mistakes still happen. Yeah. But I think just kind of going back and kind of quickly fixing them and acknowledging them and going, sorry, like I missed it, kind of thing. We're all human.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would, going back to do the designer's check, I'd like to think they do, because all the documentation I do is in the designer's name.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have my company name logo on the documentation. It's all done for whoever I'm working with, and it has their logo on.
Yeah.
And I always say to them, do you have any sort of legal writing that you put on, what do you want it to look like? How, it represents, your sort of logo and font and things like that. But I always say, do you have a small, section of terms on that goes on every page of your document? Yeah. And so at the end of the day,
which they all should.
They all should, written by a professional. So it's, and it is, at the end of the day, it's them that's presenting to the client, and it's the client that will say, well, you've done this wrong.
Yeah. No, it's very important. So you mentioned you've got 3 kids, you own your own business, life is busy. What is a productivity hack that you use in your business or life that you feel you couldn't do it all without?
I had a good question, and I was having a really good think about this because I do have ADHD, so I am a bit all over the place, which is the joy of a creative job, really.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, do I have any hacks? Because it's an organized day, my brain tends to, skew off from those sorts of things. But actually, I had to think about it. I was like, well, there are 2 things. I have only phone call and text message notifications on my phone. I don't get any emails. I don't get any messenger or anything like that. No notifications from Instagram. I have them all switched off, because otherwise my phone would be going all day. So only that people who need to get through to me on a phone call can do. So that's one thing that I do. And that I even reduce that down a bit during my work day. If you've got an iPhone, you can set a work schedule and a sleep schedule, so you get different notifications. And I set that a few years ago. I never get notifications about emails, especially work emails. I try to minimize the amount of time that I'm constantly going to my emails.
Yeah.
And then another small thing is just to start my day with some small tasks that aren't too heavy on the brain. So I'll probably, go into Xero and do some reconciliations or something like that. That's really easy. I don't really have to think too much about it before I get into actually having to use my brain to do something.
It's you warm your brain up for the day.
Yes, that's it.
I love it. Yeah, ease into it.
I'm into work mode now, come on, we can do it.
I think that's good though, because normally otherwise you might sit there for half an hour and procrastinate and I don't know, read a website or something. Like, I think that's really good. You know that that's a time when maybe it does take your brain a little while to kind of flick into work mode. But yeah, I think doing like low-hanging fruit tasks is always good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what excites you about our industry at the moment?
For me, it's probably collaboration sort of over competition.
Yeah.
You know, it can be easy to get intimidated by there being another interior designer in your area. Obviously in Sydney, there's so many, but on the Central Coast, there's not many.
Yeah.
And so when you find one, you're like, oh no, they're going to take all my clients. They're not really going to take all your clients. And so part of me is like, well, that's exciting because the fact there's more interior designers on the coast means there's a need for more interior designers on the coast.
Yeah.
Which, you know, so I try and see the positive of that. And then also is meeting up with other interior designers as well.
Yeah.
I know you had Anna on a few weeks or a month back now. Yeah. And she'd organised this trip for a busload of us to go into Sydney and go to some, showrooms. And that was wonderful. And it was great seeing people and meeting, you know, you're on Instagram and you follow each other's businesses, but seeing someone in the flesh and chatting with them. Yeah. And you hear that you can all go through the same sort of problems, you know, no matter where you are in your business, no matter how much you've scaled, if you're working on $1 million houses or $10 million houses, the issues can be the same. And it's just great.
Yeah, they're really exactly the same.
Because it can be isolating on our own.
It really can be. I think one of the things that I've heard a lot lately, which just I think is so lovely, is the growth of the industry outside of Sydney. And I'm sure the same is happening in Melbourne and Brisbane actually. But you can understand why. Like, as more people leave our big metropolitan cities and move to, like, you know, the Central Coast and Wollongong and Newcastle and Port Macquarie and further south kind of thing. But it also it's great for our industry because it means then we have options available to us. Like, you know, for so long you'd like, oh, we couldn't move up to the Central Coast because there would be no interior design work. You'd still have to commute into the city kind of thing. So I think that is such a lovely part of the industry that you know, talking to Anna up in Newcastle and then also kind of recently talking to like Gavin Hepper down in Wollongong, they're seeing the same expansion of the clients down there. And it's a really lovely part of what's happening in the industry at the moment. I
think so. And also suppliers will then spread further afield as well with their offerings. I have a work friend that I went through TAFE with who is up in Foster, and they, you know, can only get certain brands. You know, there's only certain suppliers they can get. And I think as we expand, those suppliers will understand that they need to expand more as well, and their offerings need to go further afield. And instead of me trying to convince someone from Sydney to come and do a job for here, I'll be able to use someone local to do the work. Yeah. It's very, very cool. And I do think that suppliers are really starting to click into the fact that there is stuff happening outside of the big metropolitan cities. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Hannah, for joining me today. I have loved chatting. I feel like I could chat a lot more. I find it such an interesting niche that you've set up in your business, and one that I think so many designers should be taking advantage of. So thank you so much, Hannah. Thank you, Beth. Thank you for listening to this design dialogue. I hope you have found it full of inspiration and helpful information to take into your design studio. If you like the podcast and want to hear more, consider sharing it or writing a review, as it helps us reach more people, and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. If you would like to unlock the power of effortless studio management and elevate your design business to new heights, please follow the links in our show notes to see how more time to design can help you build a better business. Have a great week, and I will see you for our next Design Dialogue.